you, Rukmini, for filling that time with nectar. Would you like to, any other pearls that you would like to give us before I turn the microphone over to Ramaswar Prabhu, who's going to enlighten us with some very startling instructions of Srila Prabhupada. Very dramatic, emphatic, specific, and authoritative.
Will there be any time to tell some stories of the dolls and when we were in India? Or that would be, okay. We don't know.
It doesn't matter. We are beginning.
But I do have one story I would like to share that's very, very interesting, and I wanted to, it's not so much on the topic of, really? You're going to miss this story? Oh. Okay, so I want to tell you all this story. There's a new book that's been published fairly recently called Vrindavan is My Home. And it was compiled by Daivi Shakti in Vrindavan. It has the whole history of the ISKCON Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan. And there's this most amazing story that's told there. And there's a little footnote that this story is taken from a room conversation with Srila Prabhupada and was confirmed by Brahmananda Swami, who was in the room at the time. So the story is, I want Rameshwar to hear this. Please come back. He's saying, please come back. So this is a story that Srila Prabhupada told some years later. I think the room conversation was from 1972. Okay, so I think Prabhupada told this story in a room conversation in 1972, but it might have been a little later. But he was telling about being here in New Dwarka and standing in front of Rukmini Dwarkadish. Have you heard this story before? And so Prabhupada was taking darshan of Rukmini Dwarkadish, and Dwarkadish told him that, he said, I want you to go back to India now to preach. And Prabhupada was sort of sparring a little bit with Krishna, saying, no, Prabhupada has given me the Western countries for my Prabhupada Desh. I'm preaching in the Western countries. My godbrothers are in India. And Prabhupada was saying to him, I want to stay here in Los Angeles and develop this temple. Things were really starting to become more and more wonderful here in New Dwarka. And Prabhupada was arguing with Krishna, saying, I want to stay here and develop this temple. And Krishna was saying, no, you have to go. You have to go to India. And Prabhupada was saying, no, my godbrothers, my Guru Maharaj has given me the West. This is for my godbrothers to preach in India. And he said, I want to develop this temple. And Krishna told him, no, you have to go back now. And I will give you a bigger temple than this temple, but you have to go back. And so Krishna gave him this order, and that's when he actually went back to India, established the Juhu temple, the Vrindavan temple, Krishna Balaram temple, the Mayapur, temple. So, and it was such an amazing story. Have you heard that one?
Okay. Several years ago, our movement's greatest architect, Sriman Surabi Prabhu, came here. First visit ever to see Rukmini and Dwarkadish. And and almost in tears, as he was looking at Lord Dwarkadish, he was thanking him exactly for that, because Lord Dwarkadish told Prabhupada, we're going to build this great temple specifically in Bombay, not in Los Angeles. It was even, the way he told the story, it was even more specific. That the deity was telling Prabhupada, the temple you're planning, we want to build it in Juhu, India. Mm-hmm. And Surabi was just an architect touring India, looking for Indian religion. and he was brought to Prabhupada, and I don't think it was more than within 1 or 2 weeks that he had completely surrendered and was now designing our major projects in Bombay, in Vrindavan, and in Mayapur.
Haribo. So beautiful. All glories to Lord Dwarkadish for his broad vision. Yeah, he won the argument, and he wasn't just only concerned for Los Angeles, he was concerned for the whole world. Yes. But I do want to have time to talk about all the stories.
Ramaswara Prabhu needs no introduction. However, there's a letter I received from people online watching. This is from Loma Shirishi Das in Honolulu. And he said, I came in when Govinda Dasi was speaking on a link sent via Facebook Messenger. Please offer my obeisances to all the assembled devotees. I am especially edified and inspired by the full and enthusiastic and insightful participation of Rameshwar Prabhu. Mahalo.
You can read
servant.
questions, not
So,
flatteries.
with that introduction, Rameshwar Prabhu is going to share some of Prabhupada's specific instructions with us. It's only a taste of the many hundreds that he has been able to glean from Jadharani's book, unpublished so far, but hopefully not too distant future. So without further ado.
I don't know if there was a painting that did not require asking Srila Prabhupada some questions. So let's assume that most of the artwork required asking Srila Prabhupada questions. So, once again, we have 90 paintings in the Krishna book, more than 60 paintings in the Bhagavad Gita, it's 150 plus. So out of the Srimad Bhagavatam volumes that Prabhupada authored, which is about what, 40 at least, times 7 paintings, so 4 times 7 is 280, so about let's say 300 paintings in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So 390 and 60, so we're up to what, 450 paintings. Then we have the 17 volumes of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Let's say there were only 5 paintings per volume with added the photographs. But we have photographs and everything. But I'm just trying to round it up.
Paintings are separate than the photos.
I know they are separate.
7 in every book.
Okay. So anyway, by my quick calculation, if it was 17 volumes times 5, it would be 50. And then 7 times 5 is 35, would be 85. So between 85 and 100 paintings for the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So what are we up to? 450, 550? And those other assorted books were around 600 paintings. Now let's suppose each painting needed at least one question. Some needed more than one question. So just imagine how much intimate transcendental knowledge was being exchanged between the artists who, especially in the beginning, needed to ask questions about everything, and Srila Prabhupada. So if we were to read every question and every answer, we would be here for days. So we're just going to try to give a little taste. Is that okay with you?
No. Yeah.
Many of you may not know Pushkar Prabhu's sense of humor or personality, or how Krishna in his divine wisdom has wired his mind to think. He is fully authorized to poke me whenever he wants,
Or whenever you don't want.
especially when I don't want. You can poke me. That's your Leela. I understand. Okay. So I'm going to give everyone just a little taste first from the questions and answers during the 17-book marathon, just to give you a little taste of what was going on. And these were very quick questions. We were staying up all night just reading manuscripts and saying, okay, let's do this painting, let's do that painting. We had to read 17 books in about, a matter of 3 or 4 days. We really had to read them very quickly. Anyway. From the Adi Leela. Do all the members of the Pancha Tattva have effulgence? That's a pretty good question. And the answer was yes. But especially Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. I mean, each one of these questions, it's like filled with nectar, just to pause and think about these questions. In the Adi Leela chapter 10, there was a pastime involving Chandrasekhar and Tapan Misra. Where's the extra microphone? If we could give that to Pushkar Prabhu.
What am I supposed to say?
Do you recall what the pastime between Chandrasekhar and Tapan Misra might have been in chapter 10 of the Adi Leela? You have a better memory than me.
I would say between them.
Does anyone have any memory of that?
Lord
They were discouraged that Lord Chaitanya was being criticized in Varanasi.
But there's no painting of that particular. What
No,
I
but-
remember is that Lord Chaitanya was staying at their place, and that Sanatana Goswami. It seems to me we didn't do a painting like that.
I didn't ask about whether there was a painting.
Okay.
I
Then why
asked,
are we asking the question?
I asked you if you know anything about what was going on with Tapan Misra. This is my relationship with Pushkar.
No.
And Chandrasekhar from Adi Leela chapter 10. It was definitely something. Okay, so anyway,
Lord Chaitanya was staying with one of them and taking meals with the other one, because the other one was a Brahmana. Yeah. Tapan Misra. Chandrasekhar is a Brahmin. He's the uncle, actually, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu,
so
I believe.
the artists asked, what do they look like? A fair question. What does Chandrasekhar look like? What does Tapan?
Yeah, because it's not described in the book.
What does Tapan Misra look like? We're hearing these great names of these associates of God, and we don't even know what they look like. Do they have hair? How old are they? What color are their dhotis? Srila Prabhupada answered, by the way, as we were saying earlier, whatever Leela you asked Srila Prabhupada about, he instantly knew the answer to any question, whatever it was, big or small. He just knew. So Srila Prabhupada said, they are ordinary Brahmins with hair. They are the same age as Lord Chaitanya, and they wear white dhotis. So for those of you who read Adi Leela and were like up at night trying to figure this out, the artists had to think about what's going on. What is this? They have to visualize the texts and the purports. From the Madhya Leela, they asked a question about Sikhs in India, different styles of. Everyone know what a Sikha is? The men's top knot. The different styles of Sikhs in India designate different things. So they asked, as sannyasis, should Lord Chaitanya and his devotees have braided Sikhs, knotted Sikhs, or curled Sikhs? If you're an artist, you need to know this. If you look around the men who, especially in Mongol Arctic, you'll see every different style of Sika. And Prabhupada said, no, I want them to have knotted Sikas.
He also said braid is for woman.
Question.
He also said Lord Chaitanya didn't have a Sika. He acted like a Mayavadi sannyasi, but we paint him with a Sika.
I want to paint the palm leaf on which Rupa Goswami wrote his understanding of Lord Chaitanya's verse about Radha and Krishna meeting together at Kurukshetra. What does it look like? And Prabhupada said, the palm leaf should be stiff. It should not droop. It should be about 2 to 3 inches wide and 10 to 12 inches long. And if you're wondering how would Prabhupada know that, it's because Prabhupada speaks to Krishna and Krishna speaks back to Prabhupada.
But also there's many samples that we get of still palm leaves existing even from 400 or 500 years ago. And that's how they look.
The 6 Goswamis were Babajis, not sannyasi.
For those who don't know the difference, you want to explain it?
No, you're doing fine.
All right, a Babaji is someone who's out of the Varnashram system. He just simply wears a cloth. It's called Besha. It comes about to the knee, and it's white, but it's not really white because they don't have laundry detergent, and they wash it in the river, and it gets quite discolored. And a sannyasi, he actually
So that's
wears
part of your definition of what a Babaji is.
what he wears. But
no, you started to say what the difference was between a Babaji and a sannyasi.
yeah, a Babaji is not part of the Varnashram. A sannyasi is the 4th order, highest order of the sannyas of the Varnashram, and he generally wears a saffron cloth that comes down low. And the Babaji is independent. He's avadut, means that he is no designation at all. Very advanced. Paramahansa. One should be Paramahansa if he's a Babaji, or at least a neophyte Paramahansa.
Do you think Babajis are preachers?
Babajis generally are not preaching. They're called bhajananandi. They do bhajan. And as opposed to a sannyasi who will do preaching, he's called goshtianandi.
Thank you. So the question is, the 6 Goswamis were Babajis, not sannyasis.
But they preached by writing.
I can't finish the question.
Well, you asked me to describe the difference.
There is definitely going to need to be someone sitting between us soon, but not yet.
No, but they
Okay. Everyone is a
You
pre-
explain.
No, it's fine. I'm trying to read the question.
Okay.
So the 6 Goswamis were Babajis, not sannyasi. They carried a receptacle for water. They usually wore. Oh, wait a minute. How is that the answer? Okay. He's gotten me. It's not your fault. It's my fault. I got distracted. What color clothing do Rupa Goswami and the rest of the 6 Goswamis wear? That was the artist's question. Because we were painting paintings of the 6 Goswamis. The artist during the Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Questions and answers.
We had the way it worked during this marathon was we had group meetings, and everyone was given the manuscript or told what the pastime that we were going to paint would be, and what questions do you have? I need them right away, because I have to make a phone call. Or if Prabhupada were here, we would run up to his quarters. Prior to this marathon, the system was that sometimes individual artists would write their questions directly to Prabhupada, and very often Jadharani acted like the secretary for the artists, and they would give her their different questions for the paintings they were going to be working on, and she would put the questions in one letter to Srila Prabhupada. So prior to the art department moving to LA, the questions were always typically by mail, either directly from the artist to Prabhupada or one artist representing the group. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Marathon, we had group meetings. We would write down the questions and I would ask them to Prabhupada, write the answers and give them back. So Prabhupada's answer was, the 6 Goswamis are Babajis, not sannyasis. They carry receptacles for water. They usually wear, you read this.
Of course I read it.
They usually wear white cloth, which although clean, he took a sneak peek at this, due to being washed in the Yamuna River, looked grayish. The Goswamis were Paramhansas and had nothing to do with saffron cloth. I'm going to try a different page. Maybe you didn't read all the pages.
Just stick
No, I'm going to try a different page and just see how good your memory is. I mean, otherwise he's going to interrupt with all the questions and answers before I get him out.
No,
Okay, now.
it's a Jeopardy game. Isn't it?
All right. Madhya Volume 7, Chapter 18. That's your hint. In the scene where Lord Chaitanya touched the deity of child Krishna in the cave, and there were 3 deities. What did those 3 deities look like?
They were sitting in a line.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I got a mic, but he's going to read it. Better than me memorizing it.
Anyway, everyone's seen the painting. They know the answer.
Do you know what deities they were?
Nanda, Maharaj, Mother Yasoda, and Child Krishna.
Oh, sorry. Child Krishna with his parents, and they're sitting in a line with Krishna in the middle.
So there's a deity of Nanda Maharaj, a deity of Mother Yashoda, and a deity of baby Krishna or child Krishna.
And he's in the middle. Right? Is it the middle? Does it say it?
He is in the middle.
Ah, he's in the middle.
So Prabhupada explained to the artists,
It's in the book. Anyone can see it.
it's in the book because they asked Srila Prabhupada and they got the answer. By the way, this is exactly what it was like. Every day for 2 months during this marathon, this is exactly what we went through. Okay.
They were still able to paint, even with my association.
Yashoda and Nanda should be sitting down like father and mother, not standing with folded hands. They are dressed in nice clothing. The deity of Krishna can have an effulgence. All of these deities were made of marble. Okay, there is a chapter 24, and in the chapter there's the story of Narada and the hunter.
Mrigari.
And so one of the artists asked, what does Parvat Muni look like? Because there wasn't a description.
He looks like Narada Muni.
Can you tell us who Parvat Muni is in that story?
He's a friend of Narada Muni, associate.
And what was his role in that pastime of Narada and the hunter? You remember?
Go ahead.
No, I'm asking.
His role was that Narada wanted to show Parvat Muni how this hunter had become a sadhu.
Yes. So because he's part of this painting, and there's no description of him, the artist rightly asked, well, what does he look like? And they said, you paint him like a rishi, but with no ornaments. Would Parvat Muni be floating in with Narada Muni to Migrari the hunter's house?
No.
And Prabhupada said, no.
I watched
He-
everyone paint it. I was
He
there.
he should have his feet on the ground.
That's where that expression comes from, have your feet on the ground. This comes from this pastime.
In the Antya-lila, there is a pastime of Lord Chaitanya liberating a dog. It's in volume 1.
And I did the painting, so will I know anything about that? I don't think so.
I don't know. So the artists asked, it's probably your question since you got the assignment to paint it.
I was barking the question.
Usually the questions came from whichever artist got the assignment to do that painting. What should the scene of Lord Chaitanya liberating the dog look like? And Srila Prabhupada answered, the dog must be 20 to 30 feet away. Prabhupada's answers sometimes are very specific. The crowd of devotees are around Lord Chaitanya, and the dog is behind the crowd. Not chanting, but eating.
Well, do they know that the dog did chant, though? Yeah. Well, ultimately, this dog was chanting. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu induced the dog to chant, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. And I asked Bardraj, what will the dog look like? And he said he made a pose like a dog. So, remember that?
This could actually be a show.
But the other part is that Shivananda Sen, whose dog it was paying obeisances in the background. He paid dandabats to that dog. It's a long story that Shivananda Sen became very attached to this dog because the dog was a great devotee, and he knew it. And he was paying extra money to get this dog across rivers. And the boatmen, they were like brahmanas. They didn't want a dog in their boat. And but he had to give extra money and extra food and rice. And at one point, that dog disappeared. And Shivananda Sen felt very bad, like guilty or something, and he flipped out. What happened? What did he do? I forgot. He did some penance.
To look for him.
He went all over. He sent 10 men out looking for this dog. And then everyone just gave up. And when they got back to Puri, that dog was there being fed. And Shivananda Sen paid his full dandabats to that dog.
And who was feeding him?
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was throwing green coconut meat.
God was feeding the dog. Amazing. So
I just want to say, this is a prime example of a picture being worth 1,000 words.
Or 1,000 words being worth a picture.
But what's interesting about this is the artist really has to read the entire chapter, the entire story, really absorb it, and really understand every personality and how they felt in order to do justice when they're painting it. Otherwise, you're just going to paint a crowd of people. It won't have any meaning. If Shivananda Sen is one in that crowd, it wouldn't have any meaning. The fact that he has studied this pastime enables him, presumably, to paint these personalities with the correct emotion and concern and expression. Is that accurate?
So accurate, I can hardly breathe.
Okay. Every day we had this going on. Okay, so in the second chapter of Antya-lila, the story of Junior Haridas. In the scene, this was whoever had that painting, this was their question.
Okay, buddy boy.
In the scene where Junior Haridas, in his form of a Gandharva, is singing to Lord Chaitanya, what does he look like? Should we show his spiritual body within the Gandharva body?
No, we don't show the spiritual body in the Gandharva body.
So Srila Prabhupada's answer was, show him with wings. Make wings. Angelic, angel wings, Gandharva wings. He should be painted as a transparent, subtle being, transparent, almost invisible. Do not show the spiritual body within.
Should we recount that whole story?
No, I'm just liking that you knew it.
Can I say something?
Please.
This is an interesting conundrum. This description of a Gandharva with wings. Because on another occasion, in another description, and I cannot immediately quote the specific incident or specific reference,
It may be coming up.
Srila Prabhupada had instructed not
Not that.
to give wings to the Gandharvas. So it was
They don't
obviously a very specific Gandharva that was angel-like, and so imagination, obviously, and I'm going to say something that probably very few people have heard, but it was something that was repeated to me by Tamal Krishna Goswami around the time when I was requested to design the cover of the Chinese Ishopanishad. And he came to me personally. This is after Prabhupada's passing. And he came to me to design the cover of the first ever Chinese translation for his mission in China. And so we talked, and then I was really sort of pondering this, what is the best way to make a book interesting and attractive, because it was book cover, and we couldn't very well just use the same images that we have used for our Western readers.
Really? What did you use?
Well, so I suggested that perhaps that Lord Vishnu, so it was going to be a picture of Lord Vishnu, just as it was on the English
Okay, thank God.
Upanishad.
Thank God. Now, I say that because I had an exchange with Srila Prabhupada where an artist had an idea, and I asked Srila Prabhupada that they wanted to put Krishna on the cover of a reprint of Sri Isopanishad. He got very angry. He said, "You cannot change that cover. It must be Lord Vishnu. I have designed that book cover very, very specifically to attract yogis and others." So I'm saying, thank God you kept Lord Vishnu on that cover.
We kept Lord Vishnu on the cover, but as any of you who have seen that printing, that edition of Ishopanishad knows, that Lord Vishnu is sitting on Shesha, not as he was half submerged in the Garbhodakshay ocean, or whatever that ocean is, Kshirodakshay ocean, as it was originally painted by Jadrani. But he's sitting on Shesha. He is in the midst of a turbulent ocean, Garbhodaka ocean. He looks.
Why is that ocean turbulent?
He looked. I'll answer that in a minute.
Okay.
He looked. That's a description in the Srimad Bhagavatam and in the Brahma Samhita as well, in other places.
Because there's dissolution going on in that
Because
ocean.
there is dissolution going on, and because it is the modes are moving, and because Lord Shiva's dancing, making everything.
And for some in the audience who may not remember our cosmology, the Garbhodak ocean fills one half of each and every universe. There are an infinite number of material universes, and each of them in the lower half is filled with Garbhodak ocean.
Indeed, the punchline. So
At the end, the
I
punchline.
suggested,
At the end
and
of
I
every
create-
day of Brahma, the three worlds below the topmost planetary systems are submerged
dissolved
and dissolved.
while Brahma sleeps and dreams. So the conundrum was, how to make it attractive to the Chinese audience, especially because, there was a mood, it was anti-Western mood, always, especially anti-American mood. So, and it was meant to be kind of, low-key and somewhat obscure, hidden, the message. So I suggested that we should, and I made a sketch along those lines, that Lord Vishnu looks Chinese. Still lotus eyes, still beautiful round face, still gracious limbs, holding his various tools and instruments and shaktis, but looking very Chinese, or I should say maybe more sort of Tibetan.
So if I can understand what you're saying, because Prabhupada defined a unique type of Gandharva, you took it to define a unique type of Vishnu? Is that the analogy?
It wasn't so much a unique type of Vishnu as it was the idea that Vishnu, every culture has their own ideal form. So we're representing an ideal form. And then Tamal Krishna said, very good. He said, Prabhupada told me that people should identify with the image of Vishnu and Krishna as being one of their own, as being a relative, to be he is like us.
Like it says in Bhagavad Gita, like our Father? Yes, I like that.
So it was confirmed, and was confirmed through a very little known sort of teaching about imagery and how various types of people perceive or can perceive Krishna, and why it's
Yes.
important for people to understand that yes, Krishna is not foreign. He's not a god, foreign deity. He is one of us. He's like one of us. He is like one of the family. So that because there's a need for a relationship. There's a need to establish a relationship. Not that, that Vishnu only loves, Caucasians. He only, and everyone else who doesn't look Caucasian is not acceptable. So we don't fully yet comprehend how the rasa is established, because yes, the soul is pure, and the soul is, as was mentioned before, it's impossible for us to imagine the image of the soul. And therefore we've always kept a soul as a spark of light, not only is it infinitesimal from point of view of our ego-centered perception of reality, but it is in a seed form, in a sense. So this particular teaching about importance of the relationship, establishing a relationship between the soul and the divine, Vishnu, Krishna. We as artists, we had the task of opening those doors, of actually creating a channel that was possible for the ordinary people who identify with either with a race or a stereotype or whatever, to still feel a complete natural attraction to that form.
I'm going to read one last question and answer from Chaitanya Leela. Then we're going to move on to our next topic, and then I'm going to come back to the question and answers from Bhagavatam. So in the Anjalila, there's a pastime where Lord Chaitanya enters into the groves of Vrindavan and starts viewing exchanges between Radha and Krishna and the gopis. But they're not specifically defined. So the artist assigned to that painting asked, what are Radha and Krishna doing in the Kunj Bowers forest? Would it be better to show them with the other gopis or without the other gopis? And what is Lord Chaitanya doing? It's an important painting, but we didn't know those details. And Srila Prabhupada presents absolute knowledge instantly, as if he was there or could see it, or it could be told to him from within by Krishna himself. So Prabhupada said, Lord Chaitanya is witness only. Radha and Krishna are laughing, smiling, and joking amongst the other gopis. So this just gives you a little taste of so many details that the artist needed in order to complete the painting, or to sketch and design the composition of the painting. Without Srila Prabhupada, what would they do? Speculate? Assume? Make up something imaginative that looks nice but may not be absolute or real? Srila Prabhupada cautioned, anything that goes into the painting must be authentic and accurate. His first definition of beauty must be authorized. His second definition of beauty was it must be painted with bhakti. If those two ingredients are there, the painting will come out beautiful.
So thus concludes our first section of our very brief 90-minute after lunch session. So I promised you an elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room is really, where do we go from here? What's the future of our painting? How do we know what any one of these artists' painting is going to be bona fide or not bona fide? Who's to say? Is there a committee? Is there, even if there were a committee, is that committee, even as an aggregate, are they qualified? These are the questions that are really facing the future of art and artists in Krishna consciousness. Can we rely on their sadhana, on their intrinsic elevation, but so far? Can we look at these people and can we say, well, yeah, they've continued, they're the same place, they're even beyond where they were before, or maybe not, or they don't have Prabhupada's instructions, etc. And what about all the new artists that have come on the scene? What about the paintings that are presently new paintings that are in the Gita? Were they authorized? How were they actually, composed? Who's answering the questions that Ramaswar was giving examples of just now? So this is really where we have to kind of take a look. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to just, before Rameshwar kind of commands the attention of the whole group, I'd like to just hear from the artists themselves how they feel. Because I think it's their experience that's going to give us an insight into what the future holds. So I'm going to start with Dear Lalita, and we'll just go right down the group. And please, we don't have a lot of time, so keep 2-3 minutes.
Well, I think I already answered that question in my first talk. By example, when you cook prasadam, how do you know that Krishna has accepted it? It's very simple. The devotees are pleased. They eat it, they relish it. So you know that the deities have accepted the prasadam. So similarly, when you do a painting of Krishna, if the devotees, and especially the senior devotees and advanced Vaishnavas, are pleased, you know that you have followed in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada, your Guru Maharaj, and you are bona fide, whatever you are. Painting will be accepted, is bona fide, will be published or hang on the temple or something like that. That's how you know. And of course, there is references in the scriptures. There is sometimes very, very detailed descriptions in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in Harivamsa, in other incredible books that we can also refer to. Besides, also, there is all the letters that Srila Prabhupada has written over the years. I'm not sure if it's just between Jadwani and Rameshwar. It's possible, I don't know exactly all the details of that, but there is references where Srila Prabhupada is very specific, of the description. Is very, very specific. In a few words, he will tell you, yes, he's tall like this, he's got long arms, he's got a golden complexion, whatever it may be. So, and also, the scriptures also, they will also have a lot of detailed references. If there is something which is missing and you really want to know what it is, then you can find it in the scriptures.
Thank you. I just want to add to that an example of art that's been done since Srila Prabhupada has left that really doesn't fit into any of the molds that we're talking about, and that's the art of Satsvarup Maharaj. It's really quite different than anything we've seen. Some people like it, some people don't like it, some people think it's bona fide, some people think it's not bona fide. So I think, maybe you can address as we go through the line, that kind of an extreme example, because, I have my own opinion about it, and I'd like to know how that opinion washes in the face of people who are artists.
I don't know.
Okay. I feel like I was raised, like I grew up in Krishna consciousness and artistically as well. And, immediately I wasn't the first tier and got every direction directly from Prabhupada. I got it from my senior siblings, god sisters and brothers in the art department. And I felt confident through also letters and Prabhupada's instructions through different things, and through them specifically, they were passing it down. And I am ever grateful, and I live my life through that instruction as well. I guess it's an extension of the parampara. And that's how I feel ideally it should continue. That everyone can, anyone could do anything artistically. They can, they're free to do whatever. But if one wants to continue the legacy of Srila Prabhupada and what he liked, what he approved, or what he allowed in his books, then I think, we need to, again, return to that parampara way. We need to pass it on. That's what Ramdas and I try to do. We give workshops and try to pass on to others that didn't have that experience what we got from it. And then I believe that becomes authorized. you might say, just like the parampara, we're getting it from all the passed down from Krishna. And then also what you said, I agree, when you see the devotees pleased, and I'm looking for that, the reaction from the devotees and also from the non-devotees. When I see a response to a painting from a non-devotee and they are moved, sometimes moved to tears, I feel that's also a positive thing, that I've tried to just be a via, a tool, a transparent via medium, not get in the way, that somehow they are touched and by this effort of mine. And when I see that, I feel a confirmation. And then another thing I try to, while I'm painting sometimes and I'm trying to work something out, I'm doing it, I'm thinking, would I show this to Srila Prabhupada? Would I be proud to present this before him? And what would he say? I tried to reenact those few times when I actually did present something to Prabhupada, or he saw the painting in the book, or, that's what we live for, was that reaction. So I tried to project that as well. Would he like this? And, hopefully I conclude that, yes, he would. And I think that might be a good, what do you call it, litmus test for anyone. Could I show this to Prabhupada, and would he smile? Would he?
So maybe as we go along, we can address that one issue of the Vaishnavas being pleased, because you might please half the room and you might not please the other half of the room. We've seen that with the editions of the Bhagavad Gita. Very displeased, other people very pleased. So then how do you navigate those waters?
But Trudy did answer that. She made it very clear that we're following a parampara. So if someone is pleased by something that's clearly not what Prabhupada would have accepted, we don't care whether that pleases them. We are presenting a school of transcendental art. Srila Prabhupada is the founder acharya of that school of transcendental art, and there is a parampara filled with his instructions on what is acceptable, what is accurate. And Govinda Dasi gave that perfect example. It was very pleasing to see that painting of Narada with the square jaw and the muscles, and she thought it was artistically and technically beautiful. And Prabhupada described it in revolting terms. So it's not, the Vaishnavas being pleased is important, but it's got to be in the context of parampara.
I think both or all camps would agree that that's true, but I'd like the artist to address the fact that in the face of different interpretations of what is parampara, we have that going on for the past 30 some odd years. So parampara itself is open to various interpretations, and that's part of the challenge that we face going forward in the art.
Well, Trudy has a great answer for that.
No, another point came up that everyone has their area of expertise and things that they were involved in the world and in Krishna consciousness. So it's I think it would be proper that those who had some experience, especially years of experience, should be contacted, should be in the committee, should be asked as yeah. But who were involved in that. You can go ask the cook, who maybe have been here in 1970, but he wasn't over there, he wasn't dealing with what we were dealing with. And having, like sometimes I hear people, well, Prabhupada said that, and I read this, and I'm like, well, we did these paintings, and they went in his books, and he was happy. That's what I know, that's my reality, and I stand by it, Like Mother, yes. There was one devotee, just a little side thing, a more current devotee, who's painting, and he was showing me his painting, and I said, who's that in the painting? And he said, oh, that's Mother Yashoda. I went, why is she blue? He goes, oh, in the Shastra, she's blue, da-da-da. And I go, Prabhupada said, I read the letter, she's the color of golden wheat. And he just dismissed me. And I thought, well, there we go. There's a difference between, I'm a follower of Srila Prabhupada. I don't care what anyone else says. Who am I? That works fine for me. And he was very arrogant, and I thought, okay, nothing I can do, nothing can't change it, and he's okay. So I have to stick with what I understood for many years and try to pass it on and hope for the best.
And Nishananda, there's two problems here from this story. Problem number one, the multitude of instructions that Srila Prabhupada gave about art have never, in one writing, been compiled and made available. That's problem number one. And problem number two, the lack of understanding from all the new devotees, artists, of what the artists who painted under Srila Prabhupada during his lifetime went through and how he accepted or rejected art. He rejected. The next batch of quotes are going to be all the things that they presented to Prabhupada that he rejected. They don't have a clue about that either. And these great artists who worked for Prabhupada, they are the parampara link. And our movement needs to, I think, really embrace that. Because then they can train the next generation who can train the next generation. And if we don't establish this art parampara, Prabhupada told me, you put an unauthorized painting in my book, you've ruined the book. You've ruined the plan for the next 10,000 years that book is supposed to be the law book of. You've ruined it if you put an unauthorized painting in it. Hare Krishna.
I first of all really very much appreciate your thoughts. And a challenging question to you is, have the books been ruined?
With unauthorized paintings?
With unauthorized paintings.
Specifically?
Yeah.
I don't know every book and every painting that's been put in the book. I can't answer that. I can answer what Prabhupada said, that if an unauthorized painting, and by unauthorized I mean imaginative, not what Prabhupada accepted, something wrong with it, enters the book, yes, then that would need to come out right away as a correction.
But you don't know?
Not yet.
Well, I would hope
Not yet.
that make it your business to know, because if anybody should, it's you.
I'll make a promise.
Okay, good.
That before this life is over, it will be my business to know.
Well, then I have a question. What do you think of Satsvarup's paintings?
They have nothing to do with something we would ever put in Prabhupada's books or Back to Godhead magazine. So listen, if an author wants to have a certain type of art in his book, which has nothing to do with the BBT and Shastra and Prabhupada's line of books and his line of art, authors can do whatever they want in their books.
Good answer.
I think that's the right answer. When you had a painting you wanted to do, and it was actually a folklore, I guess, in Vrindavan of the story of Krishna going into a cave with Radha, and who followed her footprints. Who was it? Followed the mother-in-law, followed the footprints. You know this pastime. This is a folk story, a Braj story, and she wanted to paint this painting. So not exactly like that, coming from Prabhupada. Prabhupada had left already, but she had to go back to some source. So she.
That was my first reaction. I have to find someone who I respect, a senior god brother, god sister, as some authority. And that sort of gives me the stamp of approval. Yes, you may proceed or not. And I found someone who I respected, who was very knowledgeable, who has lived in Vrindavan for the past 40 years, and asked, what do you think? Should I do this? Would Prabhupada be pleased? You know, and that's how I always have operated. I try to refer to. If I'm not sure, I refer to my senior. And it gives me that sense, again, of parampara. Not just, I like it, I'll do it, I'll do whatever I want. I mean, there is a sense of, of space. I can do many things, but I'm so brought up through and trained in this way, which I'm grateful for. This way of keeping in some sort of guideline of seniority, parampara, authority, that hopefully is coming from Prabhupada. I rely on that. And I think it works. I believe in that. I believe Super Soul is in the hearts of people I respect, and they can advise me if I'm in doubt myself. And I would hope that the younger people or future devotees, something, would also think like that. Let me refer to someone else who might have had more experience, whether it's, dressing the deities or painting pictures or kirtan, all these different aspects of our movement that are precious and unique. They're very unique to us. And if we want to, again, continue that tradition, it would be wise to address those who are in that tradition.
Okay. All right. Well, I try to stick to what's been done, and not try to speculate. But there's a few clues that I have personally. That was, I think I mentioned this before. We were showing Prabhupada paintings upstairs, and I was new, so I didn't really have my own painting, but I was working, as I did in those days, working on everyone's paintings, backgrounds. And I was doing marble work on a painting of Shishupal in the assembly. It was a very large painting. And it was Krishna on the throne, and Shishupal is down below, pointing his finger at Krishna. And so they said, take your painting, take this painting and show Prabhupada. So I took it up there, and I brought it up to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, what is this? And the devotee said, oh, this is Shishupal, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada's immediate reaction was, why is he not getting his head cut off? And so from that clue, and the fact that he loved, like Charahasa was saying, he loved the blood and guts. He wanted Krishna real, and that was written in his letter, make Krishna real. Now what does that mean to us? What is real? We don't see Krishna. And that question was asked too. How do I know what Krishna looks like? You don't see Krishna. How? And Prabhupada said, by painting, you will see Krishna. So, it's kind of a mystical thing, but the intent has to be taken from his clues, what to do. Now, for me, his clue was, make this pastime real. He liked to see the real strength of Krishna defeating the demon. He wanted to see that. So, now that's a tricky area, real, right? Krishna is not mundane figure. He's not flesh and blood. So how to make him real? Now, if you just make an invention, or even you take from Shilpa Shastra, and we also went to Mamallapuram, South India, to study Shilpa Shastra, and they're a very exacting Shastra. Exactly the width between the eyes, the width of the eyes, the width of the nose, the length of the nose, the width of the mouth. Everything is spelled out in ankulam, right? Very exacting. Huh? Ankulam, yeah, they call it ankulam, which is a grain of rice. And how many grains you stack up equals one ankulam. So everything is based on that proportion. The different deities, the different demigods are different proportions. And then based on the proportion, you have a different scale. You have a Uttama scale, Majjhima scale. And they would build the whole temple complex on a certain scale. It wasn't just, feet or inches. It was actually different scales for everything, including the deities. Everything. It's very, Vedic stuff coming from the demigods. It's a very intense, exacting stuff. But, as Bhardaraj pointed out to me also, in that Shilpa Shastra, there's always, at the end, talking about there's also the artist, the interpretation of the artist. So even if you have exacting calculation, and coming from Shastra, you still have to deal with the interpretation of the artist, right? So we kind of go by those guidelines. There's obviously parampara clues. There's other senior devotees and all of that. But there's also feeling and acceptance from those that you respect, that understand, and the actual working of that in technical aspect of it is that we will use models because to get a reality of how the body will sit, but then we must transpose that into Shilpa Shastra. So we're using both. We're using some reference, but we're also using transcendental form, and we're trying to combine that with expression, with emotion, with the ras that is going on there. Just like the example of Prabhupada saying, you have to make Radha looking at Krishna. I mean, that's rasa. That's Madhurya rasa. You can't have that rasa where nobody's looking at anybody and it doesn't care, right? So there's certain clues like that. There's clues like Prabhupada, because Prabhupada says, why didn't he get his head cut off? Then when we went to Italy, there was one, a very good devotee who's done the Mahabharata downstairs, the whole complete, so many giant paintings. He's very expert. So when he was working in our art department, and I told him that story, and I said, you should paint this painting. So he did a wonderful painting with, the chakra coming, and his head was like cut off and back there, And I felt that, well, Prabhupada would probably like that, So there's those kind of clues that you get, and like they had said, and Rameshwara Prabhu said.
Well, I just want to comment about one thing you said, which is there's also the interpretation of the artist. And this can only go so far. And I'm going to give an example. In 1974, after my visit to ISKCON Press and the plan to change some of the art in the Krishna book, because some of the art in the Krishna book does appear childlike, especially the earliest paintings. So the artist had selected paintings to come out and paintings to be inserted. And it was my task to present this to Srila Prabhupada one by one. I would say about 90% of what the artists were proposing, which, by the way, was being proposed from paintings they had just recently completed, was rejected by Srila Prabhupada. 90%. And in rejecting it, he gave the reasons for each and every painting why it was not better than the simpler art in the Krishna book. In some cases, it was much worse. In some cases, it was borderline materialistic. And when we finally got to the scenes where Krishna is running and his hair is running, beautiful, wild-looking hair, Prabhupada immediately stopped me and said, "You see that?" And because of the time that Prabhupada had come to America, this was the phrase he used. hippie seeds. Hippie seeds led that artist to think that Krishna should have long hair. Now, in the last 30 or 40 years, I have seen many artists not trained by Srila Prabhupada painting Krishna with long hairs. Prabhupada is so specific about Krishna's hair. He says it should not go below the shoulder. It just comes to his shoulder, and that's it. It's not long, wild hair. No matter how beautiful you think hair may look, when it's painted gorgeously and it's longer than that, that's not Krishna. And if you think about what that means, hippie seed, and just bring it into the modern age, I mean, that's a materialistic, sensual attractiveness that the artist is introducing into the absolute form of Krishna. So there's only so far you can go with the artist's interpretation, and that's the whole point in our whole movement, in our whole tradition of parampara. If we were all left on our own, the world would be destined for complete nirvisesha sunyavadi, voidism and impersonalism. If we're just left on our own, those are going to be what we conclude. Those will be our impressions. Parampara keeps that from happening. Parampara keeps initiations at 16 rounds and not reduced to 1 or 2 rounds.
Anyway, I just want to announce we're just bringing Srila Prabhupada out for the Rath Yatra. Okay, so.
We have to stand and bow, and then we'll continue. Yeah.
Okay, so Srila Prabhupada is going to go out in Rath Yatra, and we'll continue as soon as he's taken out to 3:30. 4:30. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki. So we got just 10 minutes left. Bear with us, please. Take your seats. Pushkar is up to answer the question of the future. How is that parampara going to go on, especially in 2, 3, 4, 5, 100 generations from now? How is that going to be? How are we going to know that the paintings being done are bona fide, represent the spiritual world, represent Prabhupada's instructions?
So I'll say one thing, something I'll say. One thing is we can't predict what will happen in the future. Anything could happen. It's described in the Gita how everything degrades gradually. Kalena Nashta Pralaye, there's a famous verse in this 11th canto, how things degrade, have to be great acharyas come and they correct things. Prabhupada said when the acharya leaves in the 4th canto, then there's chaos. So for us to sit here, I think it's a little presumptuous to either predict it or think that we could stop it or in any way, but you know, this is going on. Like, I want to give an example. I want to get your opinion. If someone here is such a super genius, when I had to paint the 10th canto paintings, I'll give 2 examples, because there were 2 examples. And one painting is Indra, after he's offering prayers to Krishna after Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill, and there was that. And he was offering prayers. In Krishna book, dictation, and in the book, Prabhupada describes that Indra was being bathed by the elephant and Krishna by a cow. Now in the 10th canto text, it says, of course, Krishna was being bathed by the elephant and the cow. So we're talking about going to authorities. I went to Gopi Pranadhana
And he said, I told him, this is a quandary. In the Krishna book, and Prabhupada was dictating it, one thing was said about Krishna being bathed, but it's not in the text. His answer was, Prabhupada is in his ecstatic samadhi. He can see it being done like that, but we have to paint it according to the text. Then another painting I had to do, I think Rameshwar was around in those days, that, I don't know if I asked you this, maybe, but I went to Kushakrata, who was another Sanskrit pundit, for the other question was about Kuvalayapita. In the Krishna book, it's described that Krishna killed him in one way, which was, I believe, he dragged him, Prabhupada says, so many yards. The way Prabhupada says yards, it's hard to understand unless you get used to it. And then he ripped his tusks out and stabbed him like that. But in the text, it says he just stabbed him immediately. So again, what am I supposed to do? In the Krishna book, Prabhupada said this, but in the 10th canto, it actually says something different. And again, ecstatic trance, this could happen in so many ways. In fact, there are different other shastras besides the Bhagavatam. There are different things that happen if you can read like that. So we do have to go to the authorities to find out. I didn't know what to do. I wouldn't be able to decide. But I took it from Kushakrata and Gopi Pranadhana. And I had an experience in Vrindavan in 77 that we were doing the maps for the 5th canto, and very controversial. But so I was doing these maps, and 4 or 5 times myself and Tamal Krishna Maharaj, we would hold out these big maps, and there was Prem Yogi, he was a Sanskrit pundit. And anyway, anyone can read it, but there's a big description of the various varshas, Hari Varsha and Ketumala Varsha, 9 varshas, which are subtle to us. We can't perceive them. And there's a difference. There's certain things. I asked Prabhupada, especially when we got to Mount Sumeru, which is almost more than 750,000 miles high, according to and I said, Prabhupada, we can't see it. It's so big. It must be subtle. And Prabhupada said, yes, it's subtle. So how would we know? We'll be bewildered. So those are some examples of even the text being different times. So there's a lot of things at play. And Prabhupada said, stick to the book. Sometimes the book is not like the other book. So you want to answer that since you asked the question? Srila, do you propose that we could answer these questions? So.
Well, let's hear from everyone. I'll just tell you this, that the BBT trustees have been considered. The BBT trustees have agreed to consider that there needs to be an art editorial board, just as there is a writing editorial board. Because the writing editorial board is supposed to review manuscripts being submitted to the BBT and make sure shastrically, at the very least, that they are genuine, authentic, and not deviating from Prabhupada's teachings.
Well, this was 30 years ago, they made the same decision, and people have been getting up and doing paintings ever since, and they don't go through any board.
No, that's what I'm trying to say. They took the time to create a writing editorial board, and in the same way that the physical paintings have been ignored, so all the art in the future, they was just ignored. It was ignored. They never created this board. They never tried to compile all of Prabhupada's teachings about art. And as a result, even those who are responsible, the BBT trustees, they don't know what Prabhupada's instructions are. And that, we said earlier, is one of the first things that's missing, that compilation must be there, as just like there's a compilation of instructions for deity worship in ISKCON. And if you deviate from that, it's not accepted as bona fide deity worship. There's going to need to be this compilation for the art.
Charahasa, please. Yeah, but we have 2 more to go.
Well, Moses could have seen more than a burning bush, but he saw a burning bush. Said that in the scriptures. and that is what kept that's what kept the authenticity of the whole thing. People weren't changing everything, but I know Prabhupada once said that some of the things can be made to be, can be more of like a proven. You can get it always can get better. Someone said something about it can always be better.
That reminds me. Jadharani has a famous quote that when she did, I forget the exact circumstance, but I heard a lot of things from her over the last 75 years. And one of the things was, at a certain point, Prabhupada said, the gopis are painting Krishna. He said, first, the demigods are painting Krishna. Gopis are painting Krishna. Radharani is painting Krishna. What you can do.
Yeah, I heard that one. Yeah. Everybody laughed when Prabhupada said that. That's good.
Well, it seems as though the BBT has an obligation to make Prabhupada's instructions available for artists of the future. Otherwise, as Bhardaraj Prabhu said, how would anyone know that Gandharvas have no wings and only Junior Haridas has wings? No one, how can anyone possibly know that? But I think from the artist side, there's an obligation to try to, as Dhriti Prabhu said, to really consider, I am a follower of Prabhupada. Prabhupada's conclusion is my conclusion, and to try to live in sattva gun, to try to have a perspective and a life in the mode of goodness. Otherwise, that transparency isn't there. And maybe some artists who have been painting in authentic ways, maybe if they by chance go up the deep end and stop following regulative principles, maybe their paintings will become under the modes of ignorance and passion, and that could entirely be possible. But then on the other hand, I think there's this, realm of individual creative expression. Like, I was thinking of how Prabhupada encouraged or employed that, I think, Japanese or Chinese artists to do the description of autumn, as Bhardaraj was saying, to appeal to the cultural sensibilities of the people of Japan. So that's a very real thing. And I think it seems to me that an authorized, someone who considers themselves a follower of Prabhupada, maybe painting for the BBT or Prabhupada's books, maybe might want to do something else to appeal to another audience that would not be for Prabhupada's books. Like, for example, maybe someone like Satsvarupa Maharaj, if he wants to do something for the outsider art community, that the understanding is not that this would be for Prabhupada's books, but it would be his own personal, some might consider crazy expression, but for that community. Or, like we have so many musicians who are, exploring different genres, or different writers exploring different genres. So I think, when you think about it, Devahuti's style is very primitive compared to, for example, Dhriti's style. So there's, or Kim, Prabhupada encouraged Kim Waters to paint also, and her style is entirely different. So there is that space for individual creative inspiration, but I think within the foundation of the mode of goodness and Sudasattva. And to think that all of us can fall off the deep end at any moment by not following principles of.
Well, I'm not going to have the last word here because I want to give that to Ramaswar Prabhu. But there's a Rath Yatra going on outside, and I'm very attached to keeping to the schedule of this wonderful festival. I know you have a lot of questions, but there's no question that the time is up. However, I want to remind everyone that Krita Garma and Vaikuntha Priya are the bakers here with those brown baskets, and she's got that magical ring that she can bless you with. So please, give generously, because I think the Prabhupada Festival is morphing into a more of an educational opportunity than it is just entertainment, and that we can do more each year in carrying on Prabhupada's legacy and the gift of Krishna consciousness to everyone. So with that, I want to thank you all, and I want to turn the last words over to Sriman Ramaswar Prabhu.
I just want to conclude by, Bhargava, just hold on. Bhargava, just give us a minute. I just want to conclude by saying that what's missing in our movement with the arts is the understanding of Srila Prabhupada as the founder Acharya. His teachings about art is missing, and his authority over art, as this seminar is called, a window to the spiritual sky. No one has a window to the spiritual sky or sees the spiritual sky other than Prabhupada. So when we establish Prabhupada as the founder Acharya of this school of transcendental art, much of this will be resolved. Hare Krishna.
Any volunteers for putting the chairs back would be very much appreciated. Any volunteers for helping put the chairs and the cushions back?